Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. We are between Bethlehem and Jerusalem because today we are going to visit the tomb of our matriarch Rachel. Understand a little more about her life and also understand what is in this place today and why there are all these walls around me. So if you are ready, let's get started. Who was Rachel? Her story begins far from here. It starts in Haran in Mesopotamia. And one day Jacob, the patriarch, arrives in this region and he will fall in love with Rachel. And then he goes and asks for Rachel's hand in marriage from her father Laban. And Laban said, "Of course, I will give you my daughter's hand in marriage. But for that, work 7 years." Jacob accepts the deal and goes to work. 7 years for her. And finally, the long-awaited day arrives, the wedding. And as is the tradition here in the region, a veil is placed over the bride. The wedding takes place, and the next day, Jacob wakes up to discover that the bride was not Rachel. It was Leah. Laban had dressed Leah, the older sister, as the bride. And then Jacob, outraged, and in my opinion, rightly so, goes to Laban and asks, "What happened?" And then he says, "No, it's not fair to marry the younger sister before the older one, so I married Leah. If you want, you can also marry Rachel by working another 7 years." And Jacob again agrees and works another 7 years for Rachel. Now, in biblical times, one could marry more than one wife. Let's make it clear that nowadays in Judaism it is not allowed. And also, because of this biblical story, we maintain a very interesting tradition today. In marriage, brides continue to wear the veil. But before taking the bride to the chuppah, to the place where the ceremony actually takes place, the groom will approach the bride, lift the veil, look, see that it is really her. Lower the veil, he goes to the place, and then she is also accompanied by her parents. So we make sure that nowadays there will be no more confusion of marrying one thinking it's another. But in the end, Jacob will marry both sisters. Rachel will be the beloved wife, but she will be sterile, and it will take years until she can give birth to a son, and she will name this son Joseph. In English, we know him as Joseph. Years later, the whole family will move to the land of Canaan, which is another name for the land of Israel, which is where we are now. And a few more years later, Rachel becomes pregnant for the second time. A huge joy for her. A woman considered sterile is pregnant with her second child. And she will be on the way from Bethel to Hebron, as it is written in Genesis. And they departed from Bethel, and there was still a little distance to go to Ephrath, and Rachel gave birth, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass, as her soul was departing, she named him Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And as people heard, she is going to die here next to Bethlehem, next to Ephrath. But before she dies, she will say what the baby's name is, and she wants him to be called Ben-Oni, which means the son of my pain or the son of my sorrow. It's very understandable in relation to the situation she was in, but her husband Jacob decides that it won't be Ben-Oni, but instead he names him Benjamin, or in Hebrew Benjamin, which means the son of the right hand, and of the 12 sons that will be born to Jacob, the only one born here in Canaan, the only one born in the promised land will be Benjamin. And Jacob set up a pillar on her grave. And this pillar of Rachel's grave is there to this day. And the location is indeed known to this day. We have written records from the 4th century and also later records of paintings and photographs like the one you are seeing now. And one thing I find amazing is that this same tree that appears in so many photographs and paintings, it still exists to this day. This centuries-old olive tree also helps us mark the location. But now, without further ado, let's together visit the tomb of Matriarch Rachel. And here, as a traditional Jewish site, the prayer is done separately between men and women, and we will start by first entering the women's side. The place has undergone many transformations throughout history. These arches, for example, that we are seeing, they are a 19th century renovation. And the oldest part is at the back where we are going now. And this large structure that we are seeing in front of us, it was built over Rachel's tomb. So there is a cover of plastic, cloth, stone, but underneath all of that is the grave from the biblical era. People who come to pray here can come to recite psalms, do daily prayers, also ask for a good marriage or for the healing of a relative or friend who is sick. And that's why I think these little notes that you are seeing here placed on the walls are very beautiful. On these tickets are placed the names of people who are sick and need prayers. So you can come here, look at the ticket, and pray for one of these people, even without personally knowing them. It's a public request to the people who come here. How is this tomb divided? As you can see, two sides are here for the women's part. There is this metal division here, and on the other side we can already see that there are men praying. But let's now go to the men's side, also see a little bit of how the prayers are on that side, and learn a little more about the great biblical importance of Rachel. And Rachel is seen as the great mother of the people of Israel, even though she is not the only matriarch. We see the affection she had for her children and that she has for her children to this day. As it is written in Jeremiah, "Thus says the Lord, a cry is heard in Hamath, deep anguish and bitter weeping. Rachel weeps for her children and refuses to be comforted, for they are no more. But now thus says the Lord, do not weep any more, for I will reward her for her weeping. Her children will return from the land of the enemy." Hope for her future. Her children will return to their land. And as it is written in the prophecy, thanks to Rachel's worry and crying for her children, for the people of Israel, the people will return to their land. What is really happening? Has the people of Israel been exiled from their land for 1,900 years? And in the last 150 years, the Jews began to return in greater numbers, and a little over 70 years ago, the state of Israel once again gained its independence. And that's why Rachel has a connection not only with the past of the people of Israel, but also with the present and the future. And since the Jewish New Year is coming, in a minute people will start playing the shofar, the trumpets, and we will hear it. And now we are going to start with the most complicated part of our history, which is the current part. And we will also understand these walls that are around us. Rachel's tomb is between the city of Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And when peace negotiations are made between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, it needs to be decided in whose hands Rachel's tomb will stay. And the peace agreement will stipulate that the tomb will stay in the hands of Israel. Why? First, because Rachel is one of the four matriarchs of the people of Israel and also of Judaism. And also because all the sacred places that remained with the Palestinian Authority will become inaccessible to Jews in Israel. For example, Rachel's own son, Joseph of Egypt, he is buried in Shechem in Nablus. And the entrance of Jews there is forbidden. The same for Bethlehem, the city of King David, the same for Jericho and the walls of Jericho, and so on. And then it was decided that since Rachel's tomb is between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, it would be on the Israeli side. How close is Bethlehem, folks? Let me show you. Come here with me for a second. Look where the wall is and look behind you. You can already see houses. These houses already belong to Bethlehem. Here we can even see a Bethlehem hotel where many pilgrims who come stay. So really the cities grew until one was stuck to the other, and in the middle the tomb of Rachel, and everything was relatively fine until the year 2000, when the Intifada begins, which were terrorist attacks carried out by radical Palestinian Islamic groups between the year 2000 and 2002. And Rachel's tomb was one of the most attacked places. There were 41 days of consecutive and constant attacks on this place. The place had to be closed to visitors, and also this put hundreds of lives at risk. And then they started to think about what to do. And the solution that was found, which is far from ideal, but was necessary, was to build a defense wall, which is what we're seeing behind me now. The attacks happened in the year 2000, and this wall was built in 2001. Today the situation here is very different, and thousands of people come to pray here every day without fear. Unfortunately, the wall is still necessary at this moment as a form of protection, but God willing, one day it will no longer be. And if it will be possible to dismantle it and reunify the cities of Bethlehem and Jerusalem, until then, we will continue to have this slightly different view of this place, and also reminding us of the current history of the region and geopolitics. This is a wonderful place for us to connect with our history, the history of our matriarch Rachel, to also see the present, but mainly to pray for a future, for a more peaceful future, with perhaps fewer walls and more security. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos directly from Jerusalem and Israel. A kiss and see you next time.